What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. As a student of history and somebody who's written and researched extensively in this discipline, I like to keep myself apprised and really look at what Hollywood is doing with key moments in history. Every now and then, I come across a project that's not only been well-researched and expertly done, but also finds the right blend between entertainment and historical accuracy. Now, I freely admit, as with everything that Hollywood produces, there are certain liberties that need to be taken for the purposes of driving the story forward and also entertaining your audience. Otherwise, you run the risk of putting people to sleep. Nobody really wants a history lesson. Having said that, this is why I'm really impressed with HBO Film's All the Way. Let's take a closer look. Similar to my review on HBO Film's Confirmation, I think it's important to provide a little backstory in order to help with the context of what is being presented here. Many historians, myself included, would agree that the 1950s really ended on November 22nd, 1963 with the assassination of President Kennedy. That sense of security, that sense of prosperity, and really the innocence of America were gone with one assassin's bullet. Very powerfully and emotionally, the film opens up with this very key and traumatic moment in history. Vice President Lyndon Johnson inherited this new paradigm in American culture and the American psyche. The stigma of the Kennedy administration weighed heavily on his mind, and that's evidenced wonderfully in the film. At the heart of this docudrama is the push by Martin Luther King and the Johnson administration to pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Now, from our perspective, the fact that people are entitled to civil rights seems like a mundane thing. But back in the 1960s, this was counterculture, even revolutionary, and a lot of Democrats didn't want to see this legislation come out of committee, let alone on the Senate floor for a vote. One of the key strengths of this docudrama is that it doesn't present these key events as very idyllic at all. What I found fascinating was the fact that it really shows the compromises that had to be made by the Johnson administration and Martin Luther King to satisfy their key constituencies. Another key component, and something that's often overlooked by history, is just how much influence J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI had over historical events. The inclusion of the FBI in this story only adds to the complexity of this very tumultuous time in history. Lyndon Johnson, for all intents and purposes, was a larger-than-life politician, both figuratively and literally. Many of those who worked in his administration described him as a giant Texan with a vulgar, foul mouth who had a propensity to fly into fits of rage if he didn't get what he wanted. What Bryan Cranston has done here in portraying LBJ is nothing short of astounding. Bryan Cranston was able to portray this very brash politician while still showing his very human side and many of the vulnerabilities that Johnson had. In short, Bryan Cranston is Lyndon Baines Johnson. It's an absolutely amazing performance. Anthony Mackie as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was spectacular. I absolutely have a whole new dimension of respect for Anthony Mackie. This was the perfect role for him, and I'm glad that he made a conscious decision to seek out this new venue. What made Mackie's portrayal so redefining is that unlike other portrayals of Dr. King, he didn't try to mimic him. He didn't try to make him into a caricature. Instead, Mackie focuses on a much more real portrayal of a leader/activist who's trying to get an agenda passed. What was actually even more profound for me is that it explores some of the extramarital activities of Dr. King without being self-righteous or preachy. They're not looking to smear the name of a great man, instead just showing that he was a man. Melissa Leo was absolutely fantastic in her role as Lady Bird, and although she didn't get too much time in the film, when she was on screen, her performances were absolutely memorable. The exchanges between her and Cranston were really heartfelt, and you really get a sense that they were married. I'm really glad that they showcased Lady Bird in this docudrama, as she really was Lyndon Baines Johnson's rock, particularly in how she advised and counseled him after the assassination of President Kennedy. Rounding out this stellar cast was Frank Langella, an absolutely amazing performance. In the film, he portrays Senator Richard Russell and is really the opposition of what Lyndon Johnson calls the Dixiecrats. His powerful performance really showcases the opposition that the Southern Democrats had for the Civil Rights Act. I also have to mention strong performances by Bradley Whitford as Senator Herbert Humphrey and also Stephen Root as J. Edgar Hoover. Overall, this is an amazing docudrama and really showcases that the road to equality is not linear. It isn't fueled and sustained by ideology alone. but instead manipulation, shady back alley deals, threats, and even at times political suicide. To summarize, the legacy of the Johnson administration was much more profound than people realize, and the ramifications of his decisions can still be felt today. Apart from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Johnson also declared a war on poverty. His administration instituted such programs as food stamps, work study, Medicare, and Medicaid, to name a few. These are all truly remarkable achievements indeed. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on HBO Film's All the Way. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.